This is my 6th visit in Russia. The more I visit this country, I feel like I open something new, furthering my knowledge. Although I may be pretty well experienced, I will speak for my dad, who was born and raised in Yaroslav, Russia, one of the places we visited on our trip. Our visit included the cities Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Yaroslav. In Moscow, as a small group, we had a van and a personal guide. My mom's nephew, Ilya, helped us with this case a lot. Our group included my mom, my dad, my sister Natalie, her boyfriend Alejandro, also known as Ali, and finally me, Michael. Anyways, our tour started not far from the Red Square. Our guide, whose name is Nadezhda, was a little bit nervous, and she kind of sputtered out lots of information that wasn't really necessary. For example, whenever we would pass by some little church that wasn't really important or famous or anything interesting, she would tell about its history from now to 300 years back. But sometimes she would be silent whenever we might pass by a very interesting place. To fix this, we kept asking a lot of questions just to cheer her up. One way or another, we made a small circle through the downtown area by the famous, and as my dad says, mighty KGB headquarters. Then we showed up at the Red Square once again. Here waiting for us was the beautiful and famous St. Basil's Cathedral, monument to Minin and Pozharsky, who saved Russia 400 years ago. As for St. Basil's Cathedral, we decided to take a more detailed look when we got back to the Red Square after our tour was over. Now the Red Square itself. Before our trip, I asked my dad to tell me more about this famous place. I was well prepared. Natalie was here before, but she was too young. It was a new rediscovery for her. As for Ali, it was a total new experience. It was his first time away from America, and he was right in the heart of Russia. Here Natalie spotted Moscow's most famous department store, but we decided to visit it later. Then we boarded our van and we drove across Moscow River. As my dad says, here you can find the most recognizable views of Moscow. He carried those views from his childhood, and he was surprised with the changes. Moscow traffic is a little bit chaotic, but our driver was confident. We drove through a dense maze of streets, crossed some bridges, and got to Volhonka Street, moving south. My dad mentioned that street vendors use the same glass cones to sell beverages like in the faraway 60s. Moscow's population is very diverse now, and you can see groups of people looking and behaving not like typical Russians. Here's the Russian word for them, Gastarbeiter. Russian language and culture also take some weird turns. Look at this sign. It simply puts English words in Russian letters, while there are perfect Russian words for this. The question is, who forced them to do this? There we were, moving along the streets. We reached the famous Novodevichy Monastery. This place is full of history and best known currently for its graveyard with Russian celebrities of all times. I really started to feel like jet lag was attacking me again. I felt very exhausted. We tried to stay awake knowing that so many interesting things are yet to be seen, and what we saw was a real eye-opener. My dad noticed the new high-rises of Moscow's newly built business center, and he said that Moscow caught up with the rest of the world's capital, being 40 years behind. There we crossed Moscow River one more time, and we reached the Sparrow Hills. This place, along with the beautiful and huge building of Moscow State University, dominates the whole city. Dad also recalled that there used to be a subway station right in the middle of the bridge, but it closed a long time ago. We also made a stop at the observation point. My dad told me that he was standing here 31 years ago. There was a big crowd of people watching the Olympic torch burning the day after it was lit. He could hear camera clicks, but some people were almost silently staring at the torch and trying to memorize the historical moment. This place was, and still is, like a magnet. You can't leave it easily. You want to be there forever. After we stopped by several souvenir vendors, who were almost everywhere, we got into the van again and drove down the Korsigan Street toward Gievskaya train station. Moscow is a big city. There are miles and miles of streets. My dad told me that he remembered the exact route we took because he had taken the tour several times before, only he just walked instead of using a car. That is why he knows Moscow very well. We were passing by riverbanks full of big buildings, modern and old. It was just like the Moscow my dad knew so many years ago, only there were a few changes. He said that this song was constantly playing inside him, reminding him about his youth. Just listen to it. Все, чем я живу, связано с тобой, с именем твоим, мой город. Прямые проспекты и башни старинные — это Москва. Громады высотных домов и неглинная — это Москва. И звезды салюта над площадью Красною — это Москва. Все мы похожие, чем-то и разные — это Москва. Я еще найду лучшие слова для тебя, моя столица. Не в любом краю радостна Москва, знать, что я твоя частица. Прямые проспекты и башни старинные — это Москва. Громады высотных домов и неглинная — это Москва. И звезды салюта над площадью Красною — это Москва. Это Москва. Все мы похожие, чем-то и разные. There we showed up again next to the Kremlin walls. This is the tomb of the unknown soldier. There is also the memorial for the cities of the former Soviet Union that was awarded with the title of Heroic City for outstanding fighting and resistance in World War II. At that point, our tour had ended. We then had some free time, so we decided to go to the State General Store, also known as GUM, that we noticed earlier. It used to be the most famous store of the whole Soviet Union. There my dad got another nostalgic wave, the ice cream and the waffle cones that were served in the mall center. Exactly the same way it was in his childhood. In my dad's young years, you would also hear the mall's loudspeakers announcing that if you got separated during shopping, then meet each other in the fountain in the center of the mall. Here is that fountain. Here we have exited the Red Square. The clock on the Spassky Tower struck 5 o'clock. Although it was playing a nice tune, we could barely hear it because of the newly rebuilt church nearby. It was dominating the Spassky Tower, with its bells desperately trying to prove that it was more important than the historical Kremlin with its 7 towers. It's no surprise that sometimes you can see that soldiers are led not by their commander, but by the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church. You have probably noticed that my mom's nephew, Vika, has joined us. The St. Basil's Cathedral was built in 1588. It is one of the most famous and beautiful monuments in all of Europe. I have researched the church before our trip. Now it was time for me to admire it. It is so, I would say, entertaining to look at. This monument to Minin and Pozharsky was assuring us that Moscow is well protected and will still be there on our next visit. The sun was setting. Although it was a long, fulfilling day, we met with Ilya and his pretty wife Valentina. We took a walk through the emptying streets. The midnight train was waiting to bring us to St. Petersburg the next morning.